Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to Little SmartHER News Coffee Talk to start off your Monday morning. There has been so much news that has come down this weekend. It's been a little bit crazy, and you can tell by my voice. It sort of sounds like I was at the club, over the weekend. That wasn't the case. I was just dealing with toddlers during very cold weather, which involves a lot of, screaming. No, I didn't scream at them. I didn't. I was just trying to keep things moving in the right direction. We're experiencing a lot of severe weather in the South. That's one of the big news stories this weekend that we're going to get to in a little bit. But we have a whole host of different news items across a lot of different subject lines that I just want to quickly throw at you so you get ready for your week and kind of have a lay of the land, so to say, as we launch into another really big week of news with a lot of potentially very interesting stories. We'll be accompanying with some music, which I like in the background. Okay, first things first, this is a really big story that I have to admit is not really my thing. I don't normally see like space stories and think that's the first story I'm going to read. Admittedly, sometimes it's the gossip stories. But this space story this weekend is super interesting and could forever change the pathway of Americans to space and really impact space travel for all future generations. And so this is really interesting. SpaceX, this private company that you've probably have heard of, sent a capsule into
Mom,
yes.
You're saying a castle?
No, a capsule, not a castle.
Oh. Oh, what's a capsule?
A capsule is something that can sit on, in this case, sits on top of a rocket, and that rocket gets shot into space.
And then it comes back down.
You're exactly right. It's one of the things somebody's talking about.
Yeah,
So
that's what rockets have.
That's right. So the space capsule got shot up into outer space on Saturday morning. It docked with the International Space Station, no problem. And it is expected to come down this week and land in the waters off of Florida. If everything goes according to plan, 2 astronauts, maybe more, it can fit up to 7, may ride in that capsule up to the International Space Station in July. If that happens, and it's a big if, a lot of things have to take place to make sure that the capsule is safe for humans. It will be the first time that Americans travel to outer space from American soil since 2011. 2011 is when we shuttered the space shuttle program. And so that's why this is really significant. You have 2 companies, SpaceX and Boeing, private companies that are partnering with NASA to try to figure out a more cost-effective way to send Americans into outer space. By the way, not just for national security concerns and for space exploration and for the greater good of American citizens, but also for commercial travel, which could be huge business for these companies. That's not necessarily on my bucket list. I'm curious if it is on yours. But this is sort of an interesting side note. So Boeing and SpaceX are both developing these capsules. Who's going to get to the International Space Station first with humans? Whoever does gets the American flag that the last space shuttle crew left in the International Space Station. Now, Americans have been in the International Space Station since 2011. We just go through Russia, And I don't know if you've heard of this, but like our relationship with Russia hasn't been all that steady, So maybe I don't mean to laugh. It's really serious. But I mean, that's what we're relying on right now. So this is why this is also potentially really big news. So that was going on this weekend. Back here on Earth. So, bless you, for the whole country, I think that story is a really big story. Back here at home, some really unfortunate news about severe weather in the South. And this, by the way, happened last weekend. We had severe weather in through the early part of last week. Here we're having it again. And this is historic. So, unfortunately, this terrible tornado ripped through Alabama. And the count of those that have died from this tornado is at 23 and expected to rise. What's significant about this is that last year, total tornado deaths in America was at 10. So in one day in Alabama, we doubled the amount of Americans killed by a tornado just in one day. And here we are in early 2019. So the severe weather came very fast. One of the major concerns throughout the South and going up kind of the eastern seaboard has been flooding. And there's expected to be a lot of rain this spring. So this is a significant story. It's the most deadly tornado that we've seen in almost 6 years. So, hey, babe. So, this is something just to kind of keep those folks in Alabama in your prayers because the destruction is being described as completely catastrophic. I was born in California. I've lived through some pretty violent earthquakes. Totally comfortable and, uncomfortable, but comfortable with that possibility. I've never lived somewhere where there's tornadoes. We can get some tornadoes here, very rare, but we can, and it's scary. So I'm sure some of you have lived in tornado areas, and it's like, do you get enough warning? In this particular area, it was in a very rural country road, wide swath of a tornado, and really caused a lot of destruction. So something to be heads up about in the south, if you're joining us from the south, that a lot of severe weather is something we're keeping an eye on. In the meantime, we have another person joining the 2020 presidential race. It's Governor Hickenlooper from Colorado, someone I've actually interviewed before in the past. He's two-time governor from Colorado. He describes himself as an extreme moderate and has a reputation for not being like the typical politician. And what's interesting, I think, to note about him joining the race is that he's the second governor to join the race. You have the governor of Washington State that's joining the race. This is the former governor of Colorado. But we've had our whole kind of wave of senators, Senator Booker, Senator Harris, Senator Warren, that are joining the Democrat race. Now you're sort of getting the governors, and there's a big question, will Joe Biden, former vice president, join in? And will Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, make his run official as an independent? So just kind of want you to know that get that on your radar as well. A couple things happened as well that relate to what's going on in the future in Washington, D.C. You have the president who gave a huge speech in front of this major conservative group this weekend. It was a wide-ranging speech, about 2 hours long. Some say the longest speech of his presidency or near that. And he went off on a whole bunch of different issues. A lot of his critics, characterized his speech in one way. That's what he did this Saturday. In the meantime, you have Democrats continuing their investigation into the president for any number of things, including obstruction of justice. A lot of this ties back to Michael Cohen's testimony, the former personal attorney of President Trump that testified last week in front of Congress. He's going to be back this week in front of Congress as well. But now Congress, remember, the House of Representatives is supposed to represent the people, and they have investigative authority. So this is part of their job, Democrat or Republican, to investigate where they see investigations warranted. And that's what Democrats are really embarking on more. You're seeing more of an official request for documents coming today in any number of investigations that they could look at regarding the White House. So just FYI about that. In the meantime, one of the big debates that's happening in the Senate, and we don't know when the vote is going to be, but we expect it over the next several weeks, is what is going to happen for the president's national border, a national emergency declaration at the U.S. southern border. Now, in order for Congress to overturn that emergency declaration, both the House and the Senate have to vote and say, we don't agree. Then they can send that joint resolution. The thing is that the president can then veto it. And the House and the Senate would have to have 2/3 majority to overcome the president's veto, which they likely don't have. But we're watching the Senate. The House already passed the resolution. The House is a Democrat majority. The Senate is a Republican majority. So if a Republican majority votes on this resolution to reject the emergency declaration, that would be significant politically, although we don't know if it would actually have any sort of real effect. So that's something that you're going to see and hear a lot about until there's an actual vote. And now we're hearing more Republicans coming out saying they want to vote against it, not because they don't believe in border spending, but because they don't like the methodology used behind it, that it would be a national security emergency declaration. Okay, so those are a couple things I just want you to kind of have an idea about. And then finally, this is a case a lot of you had really strong opinions about. How can you not? A girl runs away from America, from Alabama, joins ISIS, spends nearly 5 years with ISIS, and now is in a refugee camp with her son, wants to come back home. The U.S. says, no, you're not a citizen. And her family, who is legally in America, says, yes, she is. She has a passport. So her father is going to U.S. court today and saying, my daughter's a citizen. You can't just tell her she can't come back into America. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, in a series of interviews, says, absolutely, I can. She's not a citizen. So what is the debate here? What is it really about? Her father was a diplomat. So in just plain speak, if I was an ambassador from England and I was working at the UN and I had my children in New York City like I did, My children would not be American citizens because officially I'm an agent of a foreign country. So they would not be granted citizenship. Now, if I suddenly was no longer an ambassador, but I married an American man and I applied for citizenship and I stayed here and I had children, those children would be American citizens. In fact, even if I wasn't in this country legally, if I was illegally in America, but I had children here, those children would be American citizens. And so what the United States government, the argument is so far, is that this was that his diplomat status was not officially over when she was born. And in 2016, the U.S. government supposedly wrote a letter to the family and said she's no longer a citizen. Now, that's a very legal debate, about diplomat status and this and that. The hard part is this emotional part. This woman, she's not a minor. She left, after she was 18 years old, joined a terrorist group, called for the killing and murder of Americans. She doesn't deny that. And according to one photo, she was seen allegedly burning her passport. She did have a passport. The United States says that was a mistake, that she should have never had a passport. So here's something I think you should know. Your citizenship can be revoked. It can be revoked for a series of different reasons. So my suggestion is don't go join a foreign army, for example. That's a good way to lose your citizenship. ISIS and a terrorist group is not necessarily deemed a foreign entity or a foreign army or foreign military, although perhaps there's a legal reason for it to be determined that way. So you should know your citizenship can be revoked, but it has to be revoked in a legal way. So it can't just be stripped from you, for no reason. You're owed due process, and if you are an actual citizen. So this will be a really interesting legal debate to watch and see what happens. And I'm already learning a little bit about citizenship status that I had no idea about. So I hope we can all learn about that together because, to me, I don't really like to share my opinions, but I think it's natural to think, okay, she called for the killing of Americans and she joined a terrorist group. Like, what's the argument? Right? Like, what? But here's one of the big things. She had a son in Syria. If she's an American citizen, that son is an American citizen. He's 1.5 years old. And if he's an American citizen, he has certain rights. That's just the way it is. So, interesting. Do you guys have any questions on that? I'm happy to take them. The limited knowledge that I have, happy to take them. Maybe we can, you can DM us or we can do over email info@smarternews.com. Okay, guys, that was a lot of information. Oh, Regina's asking, where's her dad a diplomat from? He was a diplomat from Yemen in the early 1990s, and they lived in New Jersey before they moved down to Alabama, where she grew up. So that's a big, that kind of is her family's pathway. Just really quick, as I see someone from the Windy City, it's reminding me of Chicago. You know what story we haven't heard a lot about in recent, it was such a big story, and then suddenly, poof, it's gone. And I just want you to observe when things kind of go into the news and then they leave. And one of them is the Jussie Smollett case, right? We know he's not due back in court. He's the man that accused, he said he was the victim of an alleged hate crime that had racial and political undertones, and that the Chicago Police Department said was a total hoax. He was charged with a felony over that, but we haven't heard anything about it. I just think it's really interesting. Again, how things sort of appear and then become national huge stories, and then whew, they're gone. So hopefully we covered some of the things that are really important, and you guys get started on your week and have a great week. I mean, it's remarkable what can happen in 24 hours. So just remember that. There can be a lot of hope and a lot of things can happen. Have a great day, guys. Thanks again for your support of Smarter News, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.